A billionaire stepped into her diner, but when his wallet slipped open, what she saw made her blood run cold. Her mother's photo. A simple black woman who had lived an unremarkable life, raising her child alone. Her mother had no known connections to wealth or power, so why was her picture inside a white billionaire's wallet? Stay tuned to uncover the shocking truth that shattered her world. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? The late-night shift dragged on in the quiet diner, the flickering neon sign outside humming faintly in the silence. Zoe Carter wiped the counter, exhaustion weighing on her, but relief crept in. Her shift was nearly over. Then the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up, expecting a tired traveler or a local in need of coffee. But instead, a sharply dressed man stepped inside, his presence commanding. His suit alone probably cost more than her entire year's rent. Moving with quiet confidence, he scanned the diner like someone who owned every room he entered. Zoe watched as he settled into a booth by the window, his piercing gaze fixed on the city streets. When she walked over to take his order, he didn't bother glancing at the menu. Black coffee. His voice was low, firm. She nodded, jotting it down. When she returned with his drink a few minutes later, he barely acknowledged her. Zoe was used to indifferent customers, it wasn't personal. But then, he reached for his wallet. Something slipped out. A photograph. It fluttered to the floor, landing face up. Zoe's heart stopped. She knew that face. That warm, gentle smile. Those kind eyes. Her mother. For a moment, she could do nothing but stare, her pulse hammering in her ears. Then, before she could stop herself, she bent down, snatching it up. "Where did you get this?" Her voice came out hoarse, barely above a whisper. The man's head snapped up, his cool blue eyes locking onto hers. For the first time, he really saw her. Zoe held up the photograph, gripping it tightly. "Why do you have a picture of my mother?" His expression flickered, just for a second, before his face smoothed over, unreadable once more. Without a word, he reached for the photo, his fingers brushing against hers as he took it back. "You must be mistaken," he said, tucking it into his wallet as if it meant nothing. Zoe's stomach twisted. She wasn't mistaken. Her mother had an identical photograph, carefully stored in a small memory box at home. She had memorized every crease, every detail. "This isn't a mistake." "I'm not mistaken," she said, her voice firm. "Why do you have it?" The man exhaled sharply, adjusting the cuff of his expensive suit. "I don't owe you an explanation." Then, before she could react, he stood, placed a crisp $100 bill on the counter, and strode toward the door. Panic surged through her. He was leaving. This could be her only chance to get the truth. She rushed from behind the counter, nearly knocking over a tray in her haste. "Wait." He didn't stop. He was already heading toward a sleek black car parked at the curb, his driver stepping out to open the door. Zoe's heart pounded. "Please, just tell me how you knew her." For a fleeting second, he paused. His hand rested on the car door. She hoped he might actually say something. Instead, he turned just enough to meet her gaze, his stare cool, detached. Then, in a voice devoid of emotion, he said, "Forget this." And with that, he slid into the car. The door shut. The engine roared to life. Before she could take another step, the vehicle disappeared into the night. Zoe stood frozen on the sidewalk, breath uneven, mind racing. A billionaire had just walked into her life and left her with more questions than she could count. Who was he? And why did he have a photograph of her mother? One thing was certain, she wasn't letting this go. That night, sleep never came. Sitting at her tiny kitchen table, her laptop glowing in the dim light, she searched. She had no name, no business card, no receipt with an identity, just his face, his voice, and the cold, dismissive way he had looked at her, like she was nothing. But that photograph changed everything. She started with wealthy businessmen, real estate moguls, and high-powered CEOs. Dozens of names flooded her screen, but none matched his face. Frustration burned inside her. Hours passed. Then, just as she was about to give up, she saw him. Richard Lawson. CEO of Lawson Global Enterprises, a billionaire real estate magnate, a man whose empire stretched across cities, his name tied to luxury developments and high-profile deals. Zoe clicked his image, her breath hitching. It was him. She scrolled through article after article, searching for a connection. Any link to her mother? Nothing. No past relationships. No known family ties. It only meant one thing. He had erased her. Zoe clenched her fists. This man had walked into her diner, holding a picture of her mother, and acted as if she had never existed. As if Evelyn Carter had meant nothing. Her blood boiled. She wasn't letting this go. She needed answers. And she knew exactly where to start.